So here we are at the beginning of another week. It's a Monday, but things will be brightened up by the appearance shortly, and right now, in fact, of Pat McArt. How are you, Pat?
Good afternoon, Jude. How are you? I'm grand.
Sure. I've nothing to complain about, really. Nobody
We
listening
should
in
be
any
so
case.
lucky.
Nobody listening in any case.
Yeah. Well, hey, when you consider it, we're doing a lot better than Jose Mourinho.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. He may have lost his job, but he's bound to have a bob or two in the bank by this time. Anyway, let's go to a serious matter, pretty serious, I think. Mary Lou McDonald, I don't know how it was, come up in the first place, but she has said she's sorry for the killing of Lord Mountbatten. And Gregory Campbell has said that that's not enough. There needs to be condemnation and justice for the victims of the IRA. What's your response to that, Pat? And then I'll give you mine.
Judah, I don't know where we stop this. Now, I remember Merton McGuinness always saying that any death was to be regretted, but that was conflict. Jude, I have an issue with this in the sense that this was a conflict. It's a civil conflict. It was a conflict based on ancient grievances and hurts and so on. And if there's going to be parity in all this, then I would like if Gregory would stand up and say, I will also be demanding apologies from the Union State for 50 years of misrule, bigotry, sectarianism. I would also demand that he gets apologies from the RUC and the British government for the actions of and the intelligence services. And see, when we've all got our full of apologies for past injustices, then we all apologise in one big bowl and wash our hands and walk away. But see this call for one-sided apology. Now, I don't agree with some of the actions done by the IRA in the past, but hey, I don't agree with this thing either. If we're all going to absolve our sins, let's all do it together. Let's have a Truth and Justice Commission where everybody can come up forward and say what was done in their name, and then. But for Gregory to turn around and say that, of course, the whole idea is they were the bad guys and our side were the good guys. That's what this is about. So that would be my opinion.
Oh, well, yes, I agree pretty well all you've said, Pat. The point I would make is this, that Lord Mountbatten was killed in 1979. At that time, Mary Lou McDonald was 10 years of age at primary school in Dublin. So this idea of apologising for things that occurred over which you had absolutely no control strikes me as a bit daft. Like, I think it was Tony Blair who apologised for the famine. Now, the famine was a bad thing, of course, and the British were to a considerable degree to blame for many of the deaths. But the idea of a modern day British Prime Minister apologising for them just strikes me as silly, really silly. You shouldn't really be asked to take responsibility for events that occurred before your time. It's like asking Gregory to apologise for the Ulster plantation or apologise for the famine. As I mentioned, in any case, Republicans, including former IRA people, have repeatedly apologised and expressed regret for all the killings that occurred in the course of the conflict, and certainly apologised for the innocent lives that were lost during the conflict. But if Gregory wants them to get into sackcloth and ashes, or if he wants Mary Lou, especially, who was 10, as I say, at the time of Mountbatten's death, to get into sackcloth and ashes, it's not going to happen, because essentially what he's trying to push for is to say, you were wrong with what you did, and as you said, and we were right. We were the good people, you were the bad people. Come out and admit everything, the whole campaign was bad. Now, that's simply not going to happen. And I'm not sure why he's doing it, except that maybe it's a way of distracting from other problems of the moment, or maybe he feels he's got to hang into his hardcore.
Yeah, well, the DUPs are getting beat up them no matter what way you come at them. They have absolutely alienated London. They've alienated Brussels. They've alienated Dublin. They've alienated their own supporters. And we could list all the other things going on. If you look around you, Scottish independence looks like it's coming down the track. The DUP have the protocols in place. Brexit's there. It's not been a great time for the DUP, and I think and the loyalists are taking to the streets to protest, and they are not getting on particularly well with the PSNI either. So what's there not to like about their policies?
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking about that thing about apologies and things. You know, you could argue innocent lives taken. Dublin Monaghan bombings. There never has been any progress in that, has there?
Not really, no, no.
Good God.
But
Yeah.
what, something that the one-sidedness, the partisanship here were unbelievable. I keep coming back to one group, the Glenanne gang. Jude, they were run by British intelligence. Captain Robert Nairac there's a fair chance he was up to his eyeballs in that. They say that the day of the Miami shooting, there was a guy with a clipped English accent present. Right. And you can keep going on. And and by the way, the security forces knew about their actions. And then we had the famous Wally Fraser, who lectured everybody about the evils of the IRA. When Wally died, it was discovered Wally was handing out arms that arrived from South Africa, right, left, and centre, to people involved in nefarious activity. So this sort of holier than thou attitude of some loyalists is a wee bit disingenuous, if not downright dishonest.
Yeah, it's kind of understandable. I think if you're on one side or the other, you have a tendency to want to paint the picture that suits you. And I guess
we have God on our side.
Yeah, I suppose Republicans to some extent could be accused of that, although I think they've a better case to make. But I think they are, to be honest, I think they are well ahead of the likes of Gregory in terms of expressing regret and apologies.
Answer your question. According to Wikipedia, Pope Gregory I.
My automatic assistant.
Alexa has just joined in.
My automatic assistant. Just one moment till I strangle Alexa. Okay, Alexa, stop. I should go back into her box now.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, what you saying?
I do think Republicans are ahead of unionists or loyalists in terms of expressing regret for deaths. I think any regrets that have been expressed by the DUP, to be honest, I was going to say they've been rather mumbled, but I can't remember any.
Jude, no, there's one thing I want more than anything else: an expression of apology for the northern state and its bigotry and sectarianism and discrimination, which are matters of fact, not my opinion.
Well, you're never going to get that anymore.
No, that's exactly the point I'm making to you.
You're never going to get that, just as you're not get the IRA or Republicans apologizing for the campaign that was waged. It's sort of daft, really. I think it's a good example of, well, if they did what you suggested, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that might have some impact. Frankly, I don't think it's going to happen. So I think it'd be much better to turn their thoughts to the future, because there's plenty coming down the pike that we need to deal with. And rather than going back and asking people at this late stage to don sackcloth and ashes is a bit.
By the way, just one point, Jude, I think you alluded to it yourself. At least Mary Lou McDonald said she was sorry for what happened to Lord Mountbatten, which is more than I think if Gregory said on behalf of the actions of the British state.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or about Bloody Sunday.
Yeah, yeah. There's no give, not an inch, I think is the phrase we're grappling for. Okay, let's leave that mucky, horrible sort of subject of war crimes, I would call them. But the loss of life during the thing. I'll move to from war to sports, which is the exact opposite, right?
Yep.
We're having fun. The new European Super League has declared that they're going to take the pick of British teams and then the pick of continent European teams like Barcelona and so on, and have a league where there are no promotions or demotions, and that'll really attract people. Now, a lot of people, including Gary Neville and so on, have said that it's appalling. It's just greed. What do you think?
Absolutely, Jude. Soccer was supposed to be the working man's game. Rugby is supposed to be the upper class game. Soccer has now become big finance. William Crawley, I think, got it right on BBC today when he said they're not looking for supporters anymore. They're looking for subscribers. This is all driven by massive TV revenues Jude, they're even doing well, I'm led to believe, during the current COVID lockdown when there's nobody in the stadiums. So I know, I don't know. It's big money. But Jude, you know, someone that's so, you look at it, Aston Villa have won the European Cup. Nottingham Forest have won the European Cup. Celtic has won the European Cup, or the Champions League, whatever you want to call it these days. Benfica have won it a couple of times. Arsenal and Spurs haven't won anything, yet they're invited in to join in it. It's not about the best clubs, it's about the biggest clubs. It's about the ones with the big fans, and it's the ones like Arsenal and Liverpool and so on, a big Middle Eastern supporters, like in Qatar and Bahrain and all these sort of places. And these guys are all, this is where it's the oil money. And it was that. Look at it now, Jude. The big clubs in England, which is the most successful league in the world, they're owned by oil money, by Russian oligarchs and all this sort of stuff. And Manchester United owned by the Glazers, and Liverpool are owned by what I can't remember his name, but it's all a sort of American model of sportsman. It's gone way from the ordinary working class people. Only, I'll finish on this, the Germans, apparently they are not joining in. And their big clubs, which are real big clubs, are owned, a lot of them are owned by fans, you know, who have shares. And it's a much more sustainable and more decent model than what the British are doing. So I think it's just great. I really genuinely do. And I think, you know, the days of supporting clubs like the old days, you know, I think that's gone. You know, they're franchises now. They're not clubs anymore.
Well, I think it's a bit ironic for Gary Neville to talk about greed, because let's face it, even when Gary Neville was playing, they were getting handsome salaries.
Absolutely.
Man United was the richest club in the world, maybe. So if you can't, I think it's what he's objecting to is this level of money making rather than the idea of money making at all. Because at present, many of these clubs are spending millions and players are getting millions. So this is capitalism in sport working. All you would be getting with a super league is capitalism in overdrive. Now, I find myself on a horns of a dilemma. On the one hand, I think it's sort of disgusting that you have these Americans, etc., owning clubs that are supposed to be English. On the other hand, I really like watching classy players. Classy players. You'll only get classy players if you've got classy money. Like I watched Messi on YouTube. Messi winning the whatever it was, the Classico or whatever. I mean, what a player! What a player!
Oh,
you feel glad to be alive when you see him. So, I think you have a choice in a way. Well, maybe it's two sides of the one coin. On the one hand, it's bloody awful that you have these. I heard a guy arguing actually that when you have owners from America and the Middle East and so on coming in and owning clubs, to some degree, that's Britain sacrificing a part of its sovereignty, which is a topical word with Boris
I don't
Johnson.
quite get that.
Well, they said this guy extended this to things like Nissan in Sunderland. You know, big foreign employers coming in and essentially being, I suppose, the modern Lord of the Manse, where they're in charge and they tell people what they're going to do, and people are glad to get the jobs. And they stay and they pay taxes maybe, and that's it. The idea of people from outside your state coming in and having powerful control of sections of society. He saw that as a ceding of sovereignty.
But you know something. I agree with some of what you're saying, but not all of it. Look, up until now, Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, and all these were part of a domestic league. And everybody was on it together. You could get relegated or you could get promoted, and it all worked on a basis that was in the confines of your own home territory. On this one, they will be forming an elite European league. There'll be no promotion and no relegation, and you're away from your own country. And it's not about, Jude, you have to ask yourself, this is about supporters, or to use your term, it's all about capitalism. Now, Jude, I would have no interest whatsoever in that. None. You know, there used to be at least when I was growing up, I was very fond of Leeds and all that, because there was Irish players there, Johnny Giles involved, there was young fella Kelly, and there was Ian Hart, and then there was, Liverpool, and at one stage Arsenal under Terry Neal were known as Shamrock Rovers type thing, because they had about 7 Irish players. there was some sort of identification. What's identification with some guy from Saudi Arabia or Egypt or Qatar or whatever? Look. By the way, I was watching the match of the day last night, and I can't remember which the teams. Please don't take us as a racist. Wait, but I don't think there was a white man on one of the teams at all. They brought in the best players in the world, and some of them are very, very good, brilliant players. I'm not objecting that in the least, but that's whole sense of these are our local guys and they can progress. All that's gone. It's now bring in the best players, pay them 350,000 a week minimum. By the way, there's some talk that I can't remember who is going to. The young fella Haaland. His father had the big row with Roy Keane many years ago. He's the top star in Germany. Apparently, he's only 19 or 20, and he's moving this summer, apparently. And he's been offered something like £1 million a week.
Nice.
At 19, 20.
But you see, the thing is, if you're talking about the Premier League in England, well, there's 2 points I'd make there. One is the players, the management, and the owners are all non-English. They're from America, the Middle East, Czechoslovakia, Spain, France, wherever. There's hardly an Englishman in sight, either at the level of the players or the level of the coaches, the managers, or the level of the ownership. So it's sort of daft to be talking about we are Manchester United or we are Liverpool. You really aren't. It's. I think you're losing something there. The British are losing something there. The other thing is, Pat, you were talking about, these teams have got some Irish people in it. Yes, I'll sort of concede that, but I think a lot of people, like myself, would support teams in England, not necessarily because they have Irish players. If there's an Irish player, that's a sort of a bonus. But what are we doing supporting English teams? Sure, couldn't you accuse us of the same thing as we're accusing American owners and Middle East owners of our foreign players?
Well, that's true. But in the old days, a lot of these clubs, there were a lot of Irish players went over and back. It was sort of part of, if you're a good soccer player, there wasn't much of an outlet for you, and there was no professional clubs in the Republic of Ireland, and none in the North either. So if you're good enough and you wanted to become a professional, you certainly moved to England or Scotland. You couldn't head off to Italy or Spain. So that was our outlet, and that's why I think we identified with it.
They're going for the money.
Of course they were.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's about money.
If you're a brilliant, if you're a brilliant musician, you would go wherever you were going to earn your living, and a good living. But it wasn't just about the money either. A lot of the clubs were given an outlet to Irish players, and they went over. Some of them, they weren't world stars, but they were journeymen, and they made a living, and that was fair enough. But what's going on now, Jude, is there was sort of, to use a political term, an acceptable level of violence. There was an acceptable level of sort of greed, but Jesus, this is getting way over the top, isn't it?
Well, I've mixed feelings. Somebody I heard, Greg Dyke or somebody was on this morning. He said, "Well, actually, I don't think it's going to happen," and I have a feeling it may not happen either. Even though the big clubs have signed up to it, I just think it would have such disastrous effects on the remaining English clubs. That it really would be sucking the life.
Well, as FIFA said that anybody participates in this will not play in the World Cup for their national teams. UEFA have also come out against it, and I presume the English League have said that if the clubs sign up for this, they will not be playing in any of the big cup competitions in England.
I think that raises another question. Why in the sport? What's the connection between the sport and places? There is no connection, as we've seen, in terms of players, managers, or owners. Like we talk about Liverpool. I mean, the team plays in Liverpool, but that's it.
Yeah.
Why do we have to have a team that's identified with a place? Why could we not say, we're going to call ourselves the Rovers, or we're going to call ourselves whatever, and we'll just get players from wherever they want to come. It doesn't have to be from a particular place.
Yeah.
Now,
but you see that the history of like Glasgow Celtic. He was a Christian brother from Sligo. Started feeding the poor and then sort of where the Irish were living in Glasgow, and to get the young fellas off the street, he started this football club.
But
there's this rich history. Well, you go to Old Trafford or England and Manchester United and Newcastle come out of the mines, and all that working class and so on. And then you have your history of like your Bill Shankleys, your Jack Steens, your, Alex Ferguson's, and there was all this sort of history that you could participate in and feel a part of. Hey, who under God knows anything about Roman Abramovich or the Glazers, or it's moving away from what it originally was.
The trouble is, if you keep it too local, though, Pat, you're not going to have the same level of football. You're not going to have the same quality of football.
No, that's true.
Ideally, I would see the way football should operate in Ireland anyway should be the way the GAA operates.
Yeah.
Where you have a clear identity of Donegal team, Tyrone team, Dublin team. That at least makes some sort of sense, I think. But when it gets to the level of it's really finance that's driving the thing. Yeah. But as I say, I'm on the horns of a dilemma on that one, because part of me loves to see really good players. And you only see really good players when there's really big money being pumped into it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll leave you on this. Apparently, Messi, he's going to sign a new contract with Barcelona, which apparently, in the last, I think it's 2 or 3 years, whatever it is, he's going to earn £500 million. Well, 500 million.
My only response to that would be, why only half a billion? Because that guy has given more pleasure to more people than any businessman, billionaire, any number of people that I can think of. I mean, take maybe the royal family is not a good example, but there are so many big corporate people who are making far, far more than Messi will ever make. By doing nothing, or maybe even by doing, like Jeff Bezos. I mean, what does he deserve that kind of money? If he
Jeff has enriched our lives so much.
I saw one of his vans out the front there today.
Yeah, I saw a bit of a packaging flying around down our street.
Well, I do get pleasure seeing a little package coming through the door. But at the same time, when you're talking about footballers, they play in they are works of art. Artists.
Yeah, the good ones are. There's no doubt about that.
And I think that should be rewarded. Incidentally, this question of identification, I would go right back. Maybe it's a case, Pat, of us saying what our fathers would have said. Oh, things have gone to the dogs now.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in St. Columns, Jobby Crossan, that we were talking about earlier, was playing. And who was the centre forward? Jimmy Delaney. But Jimmy Delaney was from Glasgow, wasn't he?
Yeah, he came over to play. I think he's the only man to have won an FA Cup, a Scottish FA Cup, and an Irish FA Cup medal. I think he's the only man to have done it.
So even then, like we're talking 200 years ago, when I was young, there was players coming in from outside supplementing the local team. So your idea of the team representing your parish or your town or whatever, it was almost gone then, or starting to go anyway.
Yeah, well, starting to go, there's no doubt about that,
Anyway, I love football, and I hate the fact that big owners are making money. I hate the fact that some managers are making money. Not too much. Some of the good ones are worthwhile. I hate that Jose Mourinho is making so much money until he gets sacked. But I wouldn't begrudge a penny to the really good players.
Yep, fair point.
Okay, well, just before we move on to the next one, what's your views on the fact that I didn't know that? You told me that Jose Mourinho has got the sack today.
They're in 7th place and they're going nowhere. Now, apparently there's a rumour going he got sacked this morning because he refused to take a team out training and protest about the Super League. I think that's highly unlikely. I think it's more likely that he's got a fractious relationship, apparently, with some board members at Spurs. And he's certainly got a fractious relationship with some players, most notably Dele Alli, who's a superb player. Yes. But he won't for some reason, he won't have him on the team. So Dele Alli, I think even Real Madrid and people like that want to buy him. That's how good he is. But Jose, there's something going on there. So Jose has a shelf life of about 2 or 3 years at most clubs, because every time that's about as long as I think the players can stand him. Except on this occasion, it's 17 months.
Yeah, but it's a sad sort of a thing, really, because whenever Jose came to England, he really did grab, was it Chelsea?
He was a special one, yeah.
And he said, I am the special one. And by God, he was a special one. He just won games and that was it, whether you liked it or not.
Hey, but Judy's on 15 million a year somewhere at
Oh.
Spurs, and he was on 15 million a year at Manchester. Jesus, talk about being recompensed for your efforts and the
Yeah,
stress.
well, you see, I don't begrudge him the money he got when he was at Chelsea, for example, but I think it's been a gradual decline since then. He's been kind of
Yeah.
living off his past reputation. So I
Yeah.
think much of the money he's been getting since about mid-career hasn't really
Yeah.
been earned. It's been earned in the back of his reputation rather than what he's
Yeah.
doing with the teams. And I think he made a bloody hash. Well, he never was suited to a team like Spurs anyway.
No.
Spurs was, and I think, was personified in Dele Alli. That kind of player, you know, skill.
A swashbuckler, not parking the bus.
No, exactly. That grim sort of grinding out results
Good
approach
results,
that,
yeah.
that Josie would take. Anyway, enough of Josie. Let's talk. Oh shit! Hold on a second, Pat. Right. Jesus.
We'll get,
Sorry, Pat. Sorry.
we're having interruptions today, Dr. Collins.
It's an international call. Sorry, Pat. Sorry.
They
Sorry.
usually come in threes, so that's Alexa, your phone. I don't know. The wife's definitely going to stick in her head around the phone, around the door now.
Right. I begin to feel I'm turning into Henry Kissinger. Okay. I tell you what it was. There's something in the phone service that sits up and puts his ears alert whenever it hears the words money. And we've been talking about money for a while. But we want to talk about even bigger money now. And that is the double Irish. I'm not, well, I am clear now because I looked it up. But I think that's a wonderful title for this scam, the double Irish. I mean, it's you think of a double whiskey immediately.
Absolutely. Jude, it's just, you know, I'm not sure it's doing us a lot of good. What happens apparently is that, what is it? Who was the last day? They got away with 69 million. I can't remember. Was it Apple or something? It doesn't matter. No, it wasn't Apple. But anyway, they transferred 69 billion out of Ireland the last day, which is quite, or the last day being, I think, 2019, but it only came to light the last day. And now Apple owes, apparently, according to the EU, 13 billion to the Irish taxpayer. What they do is they send at first an Irish company, and they send it off to Holland, and then Holland sends it back to an Irish company in a tax haven, something like that, along those lines. And then it can be claimed that they didn't earn money in any of the other places, so they get away with this sort of thing. Now, Joe Biden is definitely going after it, and even Trump went after it as well. Jude, when you and I and everyone else, when we were working, had to pay I was a PAE worker, and every bloody penny I earned was taxed at source at whatever it was, at 25, whatever it was. And then if I got a bonus or anything I got at the end of the year, that was taxed at 40%. These guys, like, there's a guy, Chad, someone, I can't remember, Paycom, I think it's called. He has compensation package agreed last year, is 200 million. He's earned, the average American earns $48,500 a year. The average American. This guy's package is 200 million. He's getting 4,000 times what the average factory floor worker earns. There is something seriously wrong with the whole tax system, where these big corporations and their executives are on. And Jeff, you mentioned Jeff Bezos and, you know, Steve Jobs and all these guys. And what do you call that guy? The original one, Bill Gates. That's they are not only they're heading towards trillionaires, never mind billionaires.
Oh yeah.
And then and if you read some of the stuff about Amazon, about what the workers' rights, and their, you know, the what's demanded of them in terms of work, it's unbelievable.
But I think this is a particular case. Like the story about the double Irish in the papers today was over Google, because Google,
I couldn't remember who it was. Yeah, it's 40. I think it was 69 billion or something.
More than that, 75
billion. They took out of Ireland.
Yeah. That's right, in profits. Now,
profits, yeah.
But the point is this, Pat. Supposing you had a chance to find a loophole in the law, that was a loophole that they had. What they did was, they were based in Ireland. They were, for tax purposes, based in Bermuda. The tax rate in Bermuda is 0. So all the profits went there, no money. Now, that was legal, perfectly legal. In fact, the British government or the Irish government in 2015 said no more of that. They weren't allowing any new companies to do that. And what they've been doing is phasing this out. And Google in 2020, for example, will have to pay normal taxation, or I think maybe they'll have to pay the tax to the states. But that particular loophole will be closed. The point I would make is this, Pat. If you were making big money, as you probably were, and had a chance to avoid paying it legally, wouldn't you take it? I would.
Aye, but Jude, hold on. That's all very well, but you're giving a sort of an innocence or a naivety to the Irish government. They knew bloody well what the big companies were at and corporations and turned a blind eye to it. That's the difference.
Yeah, but we shouldn't blame. Okay, fair enough. We should have blamed the Irish government.
That's what I'm saying.
The American companies. They're dead right. I would do the same, and anybody who was sane would do the same.
But Jude, it's not. I think like John McCain accused Ireland almost of being a sort of a laundering money for the big corporations. Several American politicians have sort of said we're basically a tax haven, and Jude, I don't know if that's doing us our reputation on the long term much good. It's almost as if we're actually doing dirty money.
Well, I don't know. It's not dirty money. It's genuine, clean money. They earn it. Don't forget, Google employs 7,000 people in the South.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair enough.
But hold on, Dr. Constance. Because they employ 7,000 people, does that give them the right to not pay tax, to avoid all sorts of things, to engage in very dubious practices, loopholes?
They're not dubious, Pat. No, I disagree. They're not dubious. If Bermuda decides to have a zero tax rate, that's their affair. And if it's not against the law for Google to put money there and have themselves charged at a zero rate, more powers for the wheel. I don't blame them one bit.
I think she was called something like Vesthagen, the EU finance guy. She investigated Apple for about 2 or 3 years, and she came to the conclusion that the Irish government had acted illegally by granting them tax concessions.
That's right.
I would still stick by the term dubious.
Yeah, well, I would say it's dubious on the part of the Irish government for allowing that to happen by its laws. It has changed the laws. Give them their credit now. They have changed the laws. But the fact that they had it open, I don't blame Google or anybody else for using it. I would be the very first to do it myself, Pat.
I think but hold on, Jude, and I agree with you totally. And see, tomorrow morning, if I could find out, I would. But here's the point: it's about fairness and equity for everyone, and that includes corporations. And and these guys, it's not as if they don't know about the loopholes, Jude. Come on, they've known about them for years, and they're remarkably slow at closing them off. But if the average worker, if there was a loophole in the PA, it would be done in the morning.
But I think, the Irish people probably have mixed feelings about these big Apple and Google and so on. On the one hand, if I'm working for, or my relative of mine is working for Google or Apple, I'm going to say, great, geez, don't do anything to upset these guys.
No.
And the other thing is, there's a certain glamour and a sense of pride in being able to say, see all the big companies in the world, Apple, Google, Facebook.
No, they've all got their headquarters in Ireland.
That's where they are. They're in Ireland, So it's a mixed feelings, really.
As I pointed out to you before, Dr. Collins, we're the second biggest exporter of high-tech software in the world, only behind Silicon Valley.
Whoa! Oh, sorry.
God be with the days. God be with the days of the fishing and farming. I think we should bring back those days when it was a farmer out in the field tilling, instead of young fellas sitting in offices with their computers. Bring back the poverty of those good old days.
Okay, well, we've been rattling on for a long time here, and we'll have to wind up. But I want to just ask you what you think of one particular thing, and we'll give it 2 minutes, try to keep it down to 2 minutes. And it's the fact that Michael D. Higgins, in a speech, I think it was yesterday, maybe with Mars or somebody, or Andrew Marr, he said that educating pupils in the North on the basis of their religious background is abandoning them to parcels of hate and memory that others are manipulating. So he is coming out and saying that if the present system of education in the North, we have Catholic schools and state/Protestant schools is a really bad thing, and that you're producing bundles of hate and memory. Would you agree with that, Pat?
But no, I'll turn that question on you, Dr. Cons. Do you agree with that?
I do not agree with it at all. I disagree completely. He's talking rubbish, as he very often does. Let's face the facts. He says some very wise things, but he says some bloody stupid things too. And this is one of them.
Hold on. Why do you say this is rubbish?
Well,
I'm sort of inclined to agree with him, actually, but go ahead.
I know. I'm restraining myself from saying what
yes, I was thinking you were about ready to go off and go there, but go ahead.
Hey, well, he is suggesting that the fact that people are educated in largely Protestant schools and or largely Catholic schools is contributing to abandoning them as parcels of hate and memory, etc. Does he really think that those kids out there throwing those petrol bombs and shouting obscenities and throwing bricks and so on, that's a result of their schooling? Wise up, Michael D. I have been in damn near every school in the north, inside them, sitting in the classroom, sitting in the staff rooms. I have never, from any teacher, either Protestant, Catholic, atheist, anything else, I have never heard them encouraging hatred or sectarianism of any kind whatsoever. Now, I'll finally say this, Pat. This used to come up when I was teaching my student teachers, and we would talk about integrated education, which is what Michael D's on about. Yeah. And they would say, "Oh yeah, integrated education, surely best." I would say, "Why?" And they say, "Oh well, I mean, just keeping people apart encourages bigotry." And I would say, "Many people here went to a Catholic or a Protestant school, so all the hands go up." I said, "So you're sure a bigot then?" I said, "No." So I rest my case.
Could it be argued now, in fairness, there's a lot of what you said I can't argue about, but could not, or double negative there, is there not a case that could be put that if you sit beside some guy, if you're a Protestant and you sit beside some guy in a Catholic, or reverse that, and over the years you get to know that person and you stop seeing him as the enemy, that somewhere down the track that you will actually be more amenable to sort of having friendships and breaking out and seeing people for what they are, not the sort of stereotypes. Like, I knew a young reporter in Derry years ago, and he said he lived in the Creggan, and he said he never met a Protestant until he went to work for a certain newspaper in the city. Jude, and that, now that's young fellas as decent as the day's long, but what I'm saying is, we create stereotypes because we don't know people. And what does they say? All discrimination and hatred and all that sort is based on sort of fear. And if you don't know the other community and you don't see them as normal human beings, does that not create a sort of an abstract society where it's sort of like almost cartoonish that they're the enemy and we're the good guys?
I mean, I went to school with some boys, and I'm not sure. I describe them as normal human beings.
Well,
and they think the same foot as me. But yeah, no, I take a point, Pat. There is a case for that, of course, and it's good to get to know people who are different from yourself, etc. But just this idea that Michael D. Higgins has latched on to, that those outbreaks of rioting linked directly into the idea of segregated education, it's just rubbish. It's just sheer rubbish. I'll tell you, if you want a real root for where that comes from, poverty. That's where that comes from. You didn't have any rioting in middle class areas, even though they were suffering from the protocol, even though they were suffering from a diminution.
I read somewhere, I think it was Irish Times on Saturday, a woman called Weir lives on the Shankill, she's a community worker on the Shankill Women's Group, and she said, you don't notice there was no rioting on the Malone Road?
Of course. That's it from the very beginning. I remember in the very early days of the Troubles, seeing a sign that said something about the falls burns while Malone Road plays or something like that. So, if you're from a leafy suburb, you won't be out rioting. And Michael D. Higgins has simplified and misled people with that remark. So I suggest he shut his trap and talk about something he knew nothing about.
Dr. Collins, before we go here, let's discuss something much, much more serious.
Right.
Did you watch Call the Midwife last night?
Oh, flip, I forgot. Honestly, I meant to. Sorry. Incidentally,
yes.
Your endorsement of Call the Midwife I discovered was supported by the New York Times critic, because
Was
Call
it?
the Midwife apparently is on Netflix as well, and they said
Aye.
how good it was, you know. So
Aye.
take a bow there, Mr. McGarry.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Collins.
As an astute audiovisual critic.
Okay, Dr.
Okay, Pat, I
Collins.
think we've inflicted enough pain and
Again,
suffering
on
on
one,
most of our viewers. We will see you
yes.
later then. Okay, Pat.
See you later, Jude.
All
Good
the
luck.
best. Thanks.